one last presentation? Yeah? Okay, very good. My name is Emeka Ofobike. I'm an orthopedic surgeon in the United States Navy, and it's my pleasure to be here to present my topic today. It's a presentation entitled, Am I Good Enough? How Doubt Plays a Crucial Role in Leadership. Now, I'm not a professional speaker, so what it means is this conversation is going to be pretty laid back and informal, okay? I want it to be interactive. Raise your hands, interrupt me, ask questions. It's going to kind of be like a conversation. Is that all right with you guys? Okay, cool. All right, I've got to start with a little disclaimer. Even though I work for the United States Navy, this presentation is all me, okay? So it's not sanctioned by Naval Hospital Jacksonville where I work, okay? It's not the opinions of the Department of Defense, which is housed in this building. Anybody know that building? Anybody? Yeah, Pentagon. Very good. All right, so it's not the opinions of the Department of Defense, and they're not the opinions of my Commander-in-Chief, okay? This is basically my presentation, my thoughts, my blood, sweat, and tears. Now, what we're going to be talking about is doubt, okay? Which seems like a pretty odd topic to be discussing in the leadership conference. So when you think of leadership, doubt is not usually a word that you associate with leadership. Okay? What kind of words typically come to mind when you think about leadership? Courage. Yeah. Taking charge. Yeah. Anything else? Communication. Assertiveness. Enthusiasm. Motivation. Those kind of words typically are associated with leadership. Not doubt as much. Okay. Now, you guys can read that definition of doubt. You don't need me to read it for you. But what I want to talk about is, when I read this definition, it brought up to me the concept of avoidance, okay? Or specifically how doubting oneself or doubting one's ability can lead people to inaction or avoiding a certain challenge that may potentially expand your horizons and let you spread your wings, okay? Now, why do you think people would avoid a particular challenge? Security, absolutely. What did you say? You say scared? Yeah, you're scared to say scared. But no, you're absolutely right. Fear, I think, is the major influence that leads people to avoid certain challenges. What are people scared of? Making mistakes, absolutely. Anything else?
Rejection.
Absolutely. Scared of rejection. And ultimately, it leads to a fear of failure, okay? You don't want to take on a challenge that you're scared you're not going to be able to accomplish, and then you fail. When you fail, you feel pretty badly about yourself. Okay. Now, fear of failure is a natural human tendency. Okay, it's an emotion, you can't control it, so it's not inherently harmful. What is harmful is when that fear of failure prevents you from acting. Okay, or leads you to avoid a particular challenge. That is potentially harmful. Okay. And so, what is it about leaders that they can take the doubt that they surely feel when they're taking on a new challenge? What is it that they do that other people can't do that enables them to succeed? Okay, we're going to kind of talk about that. Now, I have a couple of examples of famous failures. I happen to be a big fan of sports and movies. So the first famous failure is this guy. Does anybody know who this is? No? Okay. Well, this famous failure was cut from his basketball team when he was in high school. Okay, who is it? Michael Jordan. Now, he was cut from the basketball team sophomore year of high school. I was cut from my basketball team sophomore year of high school, and I never tried out for basketball again. Okay, but he had the motivation, all right, to take that failure and launch a personal improvement project. So he worked harder and strived harder than anybody else and became the icon of NBA basketball. Okay? Now, can somebody read this quote for me out loud for the group?
I have missed more than 9,000 shots in my career and have lost almost 300 games on 26 occasions and have been entrusted to take the game-winning shot, and I missed. I have failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, can you guys imagine being on the court in the NBA Finals game, 6 seconds left to go, your team is down, and you have the ball in your hand, okay? Your whole team on the bench is looking at you to make that shot to make it, to win the game. thousands of fans in the arena are looking at you to see if you're going to make that shot. And there's millions of people watching on TV all over the world, staring at you, wanting to see if you're going to make that shot. How many people would want to take that shot? How many people would want to pass the rock to somebody else on the team? Okay? That's normal, okay? Sure, we'd all like to have the glory of making a game-winning shot, but none of us would want to deal with the failure and disappointment if we end up missing. Michael Jordan's missed that shot 26 times. And the very next time that situation came up, guess what? He wants the ball in his hands, okay? That's what leaders do. Their doubt and their fear of failure does not prevent them from doing what needs to be done, okay? And the fact that he's failed over and over again has not stopped him from striving to succeed, okay? In fact, the failures have enabled him to succeed because he knows that there is life after a failure, okay? Now this next example is a little bit harder. Does anybody know who that is? Okay. This guy dropped out of high school because he had terrible grades. Okay, he loved movies, he wanted to make movies. So he applies to film school, got rejected. All right, no big deal. He applied a second time, got rejected again. All right, fine. Third time's a charm? No, not for him, okay? Over and over he tried to apply to film school and he got rejected. But he persevered, okay? He didn't let that doubt that he must have felt from getting rejected prevent him from trying to achieve his goal. So what did he end up doing? He ended up making the movie Jaws. Does anybody know who it is now? Okay. Then he came out with E.T. Steven Spielberg. Right. Jurassic Park. Ever heard of that movie? Never heard of Jurassic Park? Crazy. And War of the Worlds. Okay. So yeah, we're talking about Oscar-winning director Steven Spielberg. All right. If this is an example of a Hollywood failure, sign me up. I want to be a Hollywood failure. Okay. But in both of these examples, Spielberg and Michael Jordan, early failures in life did not prevent them from striving to succeed. Okay. The doubt they must have felt did not prevent them from looking on to greater achievements. So how is it that they accomplish this? What is it that leaders do with the doubt that they feel that enables them, rather than having it be a hindrance or preventing them from doing something, keeping moving forward? What is it that leaders do? Well, I have a three-step plan, so to speak, for how leaders do it and how each and every one of us can do it. Okay. The first step is to recognize the challenge. It sounds pretty simple. Okay. If you're standing here at the edge of a cliff and your goal is over on the other side, then the size of that gap is your challenge. The loftier the goal, probably the higher the challenge, and maybe the more doubt you feel when you're contemplating how you're going to accomplish it. But the first thing is just to recognize that challenge. Okay. Once you recognize that challenge, you got to validate your doubts. Okay. That's just a fancy word for saying freak out. All right. It makes you uncomfortable. It makes you insecure. You have doubt in your abilities. So feel free to freak out, scream, cry, talk to a friend, talk to a parent, talk to your pastor, pray. Whatever it takes, give your doubt a voice. Okay? It's okay to admit that you're scared to do something or that something intimidates you. That does not make you weak. It actually makes you strong because you admit that you have a weakness. Okay, nobody's perfect. Okay, so you really do have to validate your doubts. All right, does that make sense? Okay. Now the third step, and the hardest part about it, is once you've validated your doubts, you push it to the back of your mind. Okay, you don't forget about it, but you don't let it stop you from doing what needs to be done, and you just go ahead and get to work. Okay. Now that's a pretty general statement, but depending on what goal you're trying to accomplish, that determines what you have to do to get to work. Okay. The most important part, though, is that you're actually moving forward rather than staying still or actually retreating away from whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. Okay. Now I have my own little example of these three steps in action. When I first joined the Navy, I had to go to Navy officer training. It's a 6-week course in Newport, Rhode Island. Part of that involves passing a Navy swim test. Now, I'm not a good swimmer. I'm not particularly fond of the water. So week 2, you do this Navy swim test. It involves jumping off this 7-foot platform into a pool, doing a 5-minute dead man float, and then swimming 50 meters up and back on the length of the pool. So I jumped off the 7-foot platform, no big deal. All right. I go to do the dead man's float, and I recognize my challenge 30 seconds in when I'm sitting on the bottom of the pool, not floating. All right. time I get up to the surface, the instructor says, out of the pool, you failed. All right? So my punishment is I got to go back to the pool at 6 a.m. every morning to do remedial swimming until I can pass this test. All right? And I have 4 weeks to do it, because that's when I graduate. The person I have in my corner is my buddy Nathan, who came in the pool with me every morning at 6 and helped me do this floating. All right? He supported me, he encouraged me, you know. And this is probably when I was at my lowest. Fast forward to the last week of the program. Okay, it's Tuesday and we graduate on Friday, and I still haven't passed this floating test yet. And that's when I finally decided to get to work. Okay, that's when I'm freaking out and saying, you know, it's do or die time, and you guys say Christ. So that day, 3 days before graduation, I finally passed that floating test. All right. Despite all the other accomplishments I've had in my life up to that point and past that point, that is still, I think, my greatest achievement to this day. That's what I feel the most pride in. Not because it was really a big deal, because it's not, but because I had such a hard time struggling with it, and I didn't think I'd ever be able to accomplish it. Okay, but as I validated my doubts and got to work, I was able to accomplish it. Now, I have a couple of movie clips that I think really emphasize the points that we're describing. Okay. This first one's from the movie Gladiator. I don't know if you guys have watched it. It's pretty violent and gory, but it's an excellent movie that pertains to leadership. Now, in this scene, the Emperor of Rome, Marcus Aurelius, knows that he's dying, and he's looking to somebody to pass his leadership and authority to after he dies. Now, typically, the Emperor will pass it to his son, but in this case, Marcus wants to pass it to Maximus, who's a general in one of his armies. Okay, Maximus and his army had just defeated one of the last tribes, preventing the expansion of the Roman Empire. And Maximus is like, hey, my job is done. I'm ready to go home to my wife and my kid. All right? And then Caesar drops his bombshell on him. Okay? I want you to watch this clip, and afterwards we're going to talk about when Marcus recognizes the challenge, how he validates his doubts, and when he decides to get to work. Okay?
Stones of warm sun. Kitchen garden smells of herbs in the day. Jasmine and yew. Through the gate is a giant poplar. Pigs, apples, pears, the soil, Marcus, black like my wife's hair. Grapes on the south slopes, olives on the north. Wild ponies playing in the house. I teach my son he loves to be one. Remember the last time you were home? 2 years, 264 days this morning. I envy you, Maximus. What's going on? Work fighting?
There is one more duty that I ask of you before you go home.
What would you have me do, Caesar?
I want you to become protector of Rome after I die. I will empower you to one end alone, to give power back to the people of Rome and end the corruption that has grounded. Would you accept this great honor that I am offered?
With all my heart now.
Excellent. That is why it must be you.
Surely a prefect, a senator, somebody who knows the city, who understands her politics.
But you have not been corrupted by her politics.
And Commodus?
Commodus is not a moral man. You have known that since you were young. Commodus cannot rule. He must not rule. You are the son that I should have had. Commodus will accept my decision. He knows that you command the loyalty of the army